Hi, my name is Linda Weber. My paper, as mentioned, is Hierarchy in the Harem, How the Structure of the Abbasid Harem Influenced Women's Lives. A sacred and forbidden place, the harem acted as the separate living quarters for women in the Islamic world. During the Abbasid dynasty, the caliph, or the ruler of the faithful's harem, operated as the most extravagant example of what a harem could be and how it could be run. The caliph's harem contained a hierarchical structure that defined how women lived within its confines. The structure was broken up into three parts: socially, economically, and politically. In the social structure, women interacted with one another because that's the only people they could be with at the time. For the political structure, key figures such as Kaisaron, the mother of the Caliph Harun al-Rashid, and also the mother of the Caliph al-Muqtadir, whose name is Shagab, were also key political figures. And the influential position of the Kahramana, or the woman in charge of the harem, allowed economic involvement to happen in the harem. So this paper argues that the hierarchical structure of the Abbasid harem influenced women's lives on a social, political, and economic level. The life of Kaisaron acted as one example of how women could benefit from the hierarchical structure. According to the historian Nadia Maria El-Sheikh, a harem is a sanctuary or a sacred precedent. By implication, it is the space in which general access is forbidden or controlled. During Abbasid times, the caliph's harem acted as the most extravagant example of this forbidden space. In an anecdote from Ibrahim al-Masawi, men not closely related to the caliph did not enter and meet with the women of this harem. The harem structure has two branches: the social hierarchy of those living within the harem and the administrative hierarchy of those who took care of it. In the historian's article, Van Berkel, she notes that the caliph's harem included his lawful wives and concubines, his daughters and younger sons, the slave girls and women of his household, his mother, and also those his unmarried and widowed aunts, sisters, nieces, and female cousins. The position of the queen mother was the top dog in the harem for the women related or close to the caliph. She was the one whose son was the heir apparent for the caliph, and she had all the say. And for the administrative hierarchy of the harem, it consisted of high-ranking administrative officers of the harem, the female servants who performed the housekeeping tasks of the harem, female slaves who might be the personal property of the women, and eunuchs. The chief administrative position in the harem included that of the Kahramana, who, according to al-Sheikh, was the harem stewardess who ran the caliph's harem. She had unique privileges, including going in and out of the harem, which allowed her to execute any executive and managerial decisions. This position, being able to go out of the harem, was very important. It was limited to only the Kahramana and the eunuchs, who were castrated males. Women were not allowed to leave the harem at all. It was forbidden, and men other than the caliph were not allowed to enter. The social fabric of the Abbasid harem was very intricate. It was made up of a diverse community of different ages and social standings, which created a complex relationship of relationships within this female community. Polygamy played an important factor in the relationships among them closest to the caliph, including his 4 legal wives and his countless concubines. The women in the harem vied among themselves to get the caliph's attention, and if they were his favorite, that was the best situation they could be in. The queen mother was held in the highest regard of the caliph's concubines, and the one queen mother in particular was Kaisaron. She serves as an excellent example because 2 of her sons were caliphs at one point, and they were Musa al-Hadi and Harun al-Rashid. And as queen mother, she sought to try and control their rule. One main group in the social fabric of the harem included the caliph's slave women, singing women, and concubines. The slave women appealed to the caliph through their knowledge of poetry and wit and music. They were purchased usually by the caliph from the luxury trade business. They did a lot of selling of women and slaves at this time period. According to Hugh Kennedy, a good singing woman could have a repertoire of 10,000 lines and be sexually available to the caliph. These women used their exceptional talents as either great artists or effective prostitutes to please the caliph. In the harem of Al-Mahdi, his favorite slave, Kaisaron, undertook all the necessary skills to be the top slave woman. She competed against other songstresses at this time to keep her spot, and it was a very strenuous activity. Not strenuous activity, but strenuous on her, because these women really wanted to be number one so their sons would be better off. Whenever a new caliph took power, the queen mother would also change, because her son would then be the new caliph. When Al-Mahdi became the caliph, he freed his slave. Kaisaron was originally a slave. She was freed and then became the queen of the Abbasid Empire. He also made his sons Musa and Al-Hadi and Harun his heirs apparent, as mentioned earlier, and once at the top and her children were the heirs apparent, she was officially solidified as a queen mother. Oftentimes, queen mothers receive certain political rights based on their power and influence of their sons. Kaisaron served as one example of the political power of the queen mothers. In Al-Mahdi's reign as caliph, Kaisaron had a great influence in the affairs of the palace harem. Her influence over Al-Mahdi allowed her to exercise political power outside of the harem. She influenced his decisions when it came to some political things, such as the release of one of his viziers, Yahya the Barmakid, who he had imprisoned for misuse of his power in a certain province of the Abbasid Empire, and she influenced him to release him. So that was one instance in which she did that. When Al-Mahdi died, his son Musa al-Hadi became the caliph, and his mother Kaisaron exercised the same political power she used during her husband's reign. However, al-Hadi did not like his mother with that much power. He thought women should not be in the political sphere. And at this time, her power waned in the political sphere. He allowed his mother to exercise some political freedoms at the beginning of his reign, but towards the end, she continued to interfere in state affairs, and he didn't like that, and at one point he had lines of petitioners outside of her home instead of going straight to the caliph, which was very unacceptable in this time period. Women were not supposed to be seen by other men, and there were men lined up at her door. So to completely cut her out of the political picture, al-Hadi threatened anyone who went to see his mother with death, so it was very important to not go see her after a while. And it just proves that women in the harem can only exercise as much political influence as the caliph would allow. And eventually, al-Hadi's reign was one of the shortest for the Abbasid caliphs, and he died within a year or so of his reign. And when he did die, Kaisaron used her political influence to take the caliphate for her son Harun, who al-Hadi had taken off of who had replaced in the heir apparent line. He had replaced him with his son Ja'far. So by doing this, Kaisaron completely cut out Ja'far and put her son Harun, who was also the golden age of the Abbasid Empire. Harun allowed his mother a free hand in political affairs and at times restrained his own desires. However, when she died, he negated all her policies and disregarded her express wishes. So they had very little control in a sense.